Looking for all the latest tips, tricks, updates of what's going on in the recruiting industry, check out the Digital Recruiter Sunday night newsletter. I am not here to blow up your inbox. I don't have enough time to create an email every single day. I once a week send you impactful, a big thing that I've learned this week or realized from working with hundreds of recruiters, owning an agency myself. I'm in the trenches every day like you are, and I'm sharing everything that I'm seeing every Sunday, from content, from automation, from how to get better clients, how to find candidates quicker, how to grow your team, how to hire people, everything in between. The link is in the comments. Sign up today, or you can go to my LinkedIn profile, Clark Wilcox. It's the first link on my feature section. You can sign up there. It's all free. So you get all the tips, everything that you need, free in your inbox every Sunday night. Sign up today. All right. Today I am joined by Julian D'Angelo. I get that right?
You got it.
I got it right. Co-founder, CEO of Talin.ai, automating manual workflows for the staffing recruiting industry. Do some LinkedIn, do some email. We're going to cover it all. For those of you that have listened before, I've mentioned the word Dripify often. Well, I'm into Talin now a little bit. I don't mind it, but I've been learning about it. I've gotten to know during the last couple of months. They got a great software. But more importantly, he's been a recruiter himself. He's in North America. He's super responsive. He's doing some really cool cutting edge stuff with automation and workflows. And he's in the industry just like you are. So I wanted to come on here. We're working on some cool things. We've been trying to just figure out different ways to collaborate. So I'm like, let's just get on the podcast, have the listeners hear your story, because it's a really cool one. And I know you guys just raised a round of funding, so congrats on that. And other than that, man, it's just good to have you on here.
Awesome. Yeah. Thanks for having me, Clark. I appreciate it. And yeah, I'm excited to dive into to the wonderful world of recruiting.
Yeah, man. Let's start with the background. Let's kind of get how did you get involved in recruiting in the first place? I guess we'll kind of start there.
Yeah, so my story is kind of an interesting one because I don't know this for sure. I haven't looked into the backgrounds of other recruiter tech founders, but you'd think most recruiter tech founders worked in recruiting at some point,
No.
found a problem and work, but not me. I was my background is actually as a growth marketer in the SaaS world, specifically like B2B SaaS. I was a user acquisition guy. Did a lot of your demand gen type stuff, and eventually got to the point where I was consulting for a few different YC companies on their growth. So got to work on some really cool projects with really cool companies. But it's actually within those consulting gigs where clients started to basically ask me pretty organically to help with hiring some roles. And me being, I guess just kind of like seeing an opportunity kind of, form in front of me, I said, hey, like, do you mind if I charge you on a contingency basis, like a recruiting agency would or an external recruiter would, if we get these roles placed, right? In addition to the other services that we're doing. They said yes. And yeah, that started to go really well. One of the reasons it went really well is because I started applying what as a growth marketer, which is really, scaling things that work, implementing automation, finding points of leverage. That's what a great growth marketer does. And when I applied those things to the recruiting process, I just did it naturally. I didn't really ask any questions. I go, this is how I know how to work, so I'm going to do it. We started to get a lot done with a very lean team. And then when I accidentally kind of showed it or was sharing what I was doing with other recruiters, they were like, what? Their jaw hit the floor, basically. And they go, yeah, aren't you doing this? Aren't you hooking up Zapier to this sheet and then hooking up to this enrichment tool and then automatically sequencing that and then cleaning the, this list this way? Like, I had basically, a good chunk of the manual processes hooked up via API, via spreadsheet, via low code or no code tools. I had a whole setup, and I quickly realized that was not the norm
Yeah.
in the agency recruiting world. And that's where like the light bulb started to go off. What I had built is not something I don't think many agencies would really be able to build. They needed a front end. They needed a process where they could plug in and very quickly get up and running, without needing to be an expert in ops, in automation, and so on. And they were doing a ton of work manually. And that's I said, if I can automate things that they spend hours doing manually, I think that's a product worth building. And so that was how, yeah, that's how the idea for Talin came to be.
Super cool. So like we'll get into talent, but even just from the build into recruiting, and you mentioned points of leverage, which is spot on in recruiting. I mean, the first thing I tell anyone to join the program in the kickoff call is like, what are the strategic advantages that you have? Let's talk about those, because you have to have that in recruiting. Anything I think really commoditized. What are the advantages that you have? And I think it's what I'm hearing is you're able to have the system so dialed in that I bet you were able to have the conversations, and because you had there's no reps there, there's like you got to kind of figure out how to deal with candidates and lock down candidates, and then the clients. It sounds like, or I bet it probably created so much more room and time for you to actually do that and get caught up to speed on actual recruiting and actual sales of recruiting.
Bang on. And that was the huge thing that I realized, is that there are certain parts of being a recruiter that you just cannot automate, that you don't want to automate, that you shouldn't automate. The people parts, right? That's why our literally one of our tagline is really, less time on spreadsheets, more time on people.
Yeah, not literally.
And
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, exactly.
Sorry.
And just, yeah, spending the proper time on, take an extra 5 minutes or 10 minutes on that screening call. Really poring over, understanding like what is it that a candidate wants, what makes this candidate really remarkable, or makes them someone who I can position in a really interesting way to a client. That takes time, that takes energy, that takes effort. But I have to go and send out, I got to go source for 4 job recs. I got to use this other random Chrome extension to find their email. I got to pump it into another sequencing tool to send out the emails. And then I'm going to manually follow up with them with an email a day later. If they don't respond, I'll have to manually go figure out who didn't respond and do that. And the whole time I have a 15% bounce rate on those emails I sent, and I don't even know why. So that's a typical workflow that we'll see tons and tons of.
One of the things like from that I appreciate, because I've talked to a lot of tech people, I've talked to a lot of people that got into recruiting through software or tech, or I'm a tech guru, or come from demand gen, or the kind of the growth marketing world, and like I'm just gonna become a recruiting agency, and they use it to, again, it's almost like spam more people, but they don't really appreciate the fact that that's what it's creating. It's opening up the room for it, to actually get good at the recruiting piece. So they become more transactional, and they just like, no, I just got to get more cold emails out. I got to do more of this. I'm like, all right, you're not really getting it. And I think that's one thing that stuck out when we first spoke, is like you were completely on board with, I think, the same strategy that I have a digital recruiter, which is just like, this is meant to be like the systemize, the automate to get to more of the human interaction, right? Because that stuff does take time. I mean, I think that is where, even in this year where people are like, oh, things are tougher and all that, like that's still the winning formula. It's like, figure out what you can automate, figure out what the human touch is. And I don't care if you come from more of the traditional recruiting, well, complement with some of the automation. If you come more from the tech and the automation, like you will complement, like I got to go learn the recruiting skills, like, and hands on, but like you're kind of, you got to fill out like all those skills, right? And it's got to be part of the workflow. And I think that's just a non-negotiable in 2024. Like there's, I guess it doesn't have to be, you can do whatever you want. But I think the most fulfilled recruiters that are proactive, have business, or having success, or hitting the goals that they want, 95% of them are doing a combination of both.
100%. And even if you want to take that and quantify it in a metrics driven way, that stuff, that human centered part of the job. If you look at your full funnel, right, of all the things you have to do to get paid by a client, the thing that you're trying to get as obviously as much of as you can, you know, the human centered elements, the doing a better calibration with your clients, understanding what they want in a more deep way, spending more time on those candidates, all of those elements. What's of you look at all your metrics, what's that going to affect probably the most? I mean, I'd argue like your success rate of submit, what's the number of candidates you submit to the number of people that get hired, right? Which is the very bottom of your funnel. A lot of the inputs to being successful there, it's very difficult to automate. The top of funnel stuff, deciding who to reach out to, the number of channels you reach out to them on, the personalization of copy, a lot of that stuff. That's a lot of stuff that can be partially or mostly automated,
Yeah.
because at the end of the day, you have to look at your output. If I automate something versus I do it myself as carefully as I can, how different does the output look? And that's my litmus test for whether or not I should necessarily automate something. If my output looks drastically different and is drastically better, if I'm spending, 15 minutes myself doing something one by one, means either the technology is just not there yet to automate it, or automation just can't keep up with the human-centered way of doing it. My output looks the exact same, then not automating it is now a cost to your business. And that's kind of one of the mental model that I used to look at it.
Brilliant. I'm so happy someone else is saying it for once, because sometimes I feel like I'm yelling at the wall. But that is exactly it. It's a big part of, I think, where we help find the nuance for people in the program is, okay, automation should always be running, no matter what. It should always, I don't care if you're just building your network, it should always be running. But there are some things strategically, like if you see a job posting and you get the contact information, it's all right there, and you have the CEO or CHRO or the COO or whatever, and you're like, wait, I've just placed 5 account executives. They have an opening. It's been open for 30 days. They had 100 applicants, but it looks like maybe they just reposted it. I'm just going to shoot a message like, hey, we just filled 5 of these roles. We have about 50 people in our network that are active. They might be a fit. Like, do you want to discuss? Like, I saw that you just reposted this role. That should be personalized because you're seeing it. Just get the message out. Like, you know what I mean? Like stuff like that. Like, just get the message out. 5, 10, 15 of those a day, plus your automation going, and ideally with some good content marketing. Like, that's how it all kind of comes together. So I think I think that helps. I know it helps the people in the program. Hopefully, listeners kind of contextualize and like visualize what that actually looks like in the workflow. Like, because it otherwise, like, oh, do I build an NPC campaign? I have a list of 15 people. I'm like, by the time it takes you to build that campaign, you can just send out a message to each person individually. So I think just like always be able to think bigger, because you can do more, right? You can do more of the sniper approach, but you can also do more of the gatherer as well. And I think I always say it's not either or, it's and. Right. And how can you look at that? Like it's not about the 4-hour work week. It's like, what more can I get done within the 8 hours that I was doing previously? That's again, that's intelligent, that's strategic.
Your either or point is bang on. I see the exact same thing. Everyone has this either or mentality instead of an and mentality. And one of the things when we're doing customer demos or we're doing an implementation, uh, that's the lens that people will be looking at. They go, oh, well, we do a lot of our campaigns are like very targeted, so I don't know if we would necessarily have room for, any slightly larger campaigns. Well, I go, yeah, but yes, your sniper campaigns, if you will, are going to have a higher response rate, but the time it's going to take you to send out each message is probably 4 to 5x of what it'll take you to, let's say, build a list of 75 people who are still all share the same thread, the same problem. They're part of the same bucket, and you have to make sure that your message is still relevant to all of them, but they're part of a automated campaign.
Yep.
Like, that it might not have a 40% or 50% reply rate. Let's say we're talking the candidate side, but it's probably still going to have a 25 or 30% reply rate. If we're talking BD, those rates on both sides will go down quite a bit. But layering approaches is a lot more effective than, being saying I need this, or I need it's A or it's B. Otherwise, I have to go all in on one. I think that's a huge mistake. Yeah.
It's yeah. I really think people, and I think I know recruiters agencies should be asking, how do I get this? We should reverse engineer. How do we get this all done in a day? I think that should be the question you're asking yourself. Can we get all these things done in a day, right, or one person's day, and within the 8 hour, workflow, working hours that you have? And the answer is going to be yes. Like it should be. How do I post content every day? Well, sometimes it could take me 10 minutes a day to post content. Like, what am I doing the rest of the day? Right.
Hmm.
And, it's like, how do you post content every day? And all that's like, well, I work towards it. Maybe in the beginning, it took me 30 minutes to an hour or whatever. But even then, I still had the rest of my day. I had my
Yeah.
automation running. I would spend like an hour on that a week, honestly, because I was connected with recruiters. It's not that hard to connect with recruiters, to be, because we're natural networkers. So the strategic advantage I have is like I knew I would have a high connection rate, right, around 40 to 50%, sometimes up to 80%, depending on the campaign who I was connecting with, and I could just introduce myself. And so from a business strategy, it was just connect, introduce, and post every day. Well, my campaign was built in 30 minutes, and it was running for the next 3 months because I didn't have to be super targeted with my lead list. I could have that run. That's how I went from 150 connections to over 16,000 in 4 years because it was just completely running. And then I would just post every day. And then I had all this time for people. Hey, can you teach me more? Can you teach me more? I want to learn more. Great. I had a bunch of time for calls. Right. And so, again, that's on the coaching side, but I've seen it with recruiters that are only just recruiting. How do I handle 5 roles at a time? Well, let's build out lead list for all 5, right? 30 people, 70 people, 80. What's the biggest priority? Okay, turn on those 2 or 3 campaigns first. Once you get enough replies to get your screens and submittals, turn those off, turn on the other ones.
Hmm.
That's how you knock out 5 in a week. Right, for sourcing, if I'm doing full desk, okay, we'll have your BD campaign running with maybe 1 or 2 for your roles, right? And it's kind of churning through. Make sure you're posting content because that's a really good BD tool to complement some of that automated BD. And that's what I've kind of seen is like it's okay to do a couple of hundred on the BD audiences, and you could be relevant through geography, through skill set, through industry, whatever that looks like, and then hit them with that content, right? So it's like kind of how it all comes together. It's like that 1-2 punch with automation and content I always talk about. Like, so there's so many different ways to spin it about your situation, but no, your situation as a recruiter isn't unique enough that it's not possible or that Julian and I haven't seen it in a sense, right? It's all solvable. I think ultimately in my rant here, my ramble, that's what I'm trying to get. Like your strategy is solvable, like or your goals, like we're attainable. You just got to you just got to dive in a little bit, kind of figure it out.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think like recruiting is like one of those industries where it's been around long enough. I don't know I think I feel like recruiting became a real industry in like the 50s. I don't know if you know about the history of it. I feel like post World War II, I don't know, getting the kind of the ascension of the U.S. economy being a world superpower, like recruiting became a huge thing as like, the middle class kind of built out more. I don't know, but
My lens is with like I think because I grew up in recruiting through Aerotech and they were like mid '80s, late '80s. So I
yeah,
think I'm so like programmed to think like, oh, that's when recruiting started. Obviously, it's not when recruiting started.
yeah, yeah,
But
yeah,
the common theme I've seen a lot of the agencies like went big around the night. Aerotech, K Force, like maybe
yeah,
like hey and maybe just because I know people that worked there at those eras now, maybe the ones that worked in the '70s are retired, right? Like aren't
yeah, yeah,
working
yeah.
anymore. But anyways, that I might be wrong on that, but that's like what I have in my mind is when recruiting started.
We
Yeah,
need if
we
someone
need
is
we need a
listening,
fact check. Yeah,
yeah, someone
yeah.
someone could like let us teach us about the inception of the recruiting industry, or the version of what it looks like today. That would be cool. The point the point I was getting at with there is kind of since the beginning of um like since recruiting's been around a while, right? It's not like SaaS or tech where it's like a couple decades old at most. It's older than that. So you know what works generally. Like there's not Obviously, there's new industries to recruit from. There's different types of companies. It's a way more global game now. It's changed, but like, if you looked at the knowledge base of the industry, there's a ton of people that know how to recruit at a very, very high level. The thing that they don't know how to do, and it's funny because a lot of people are like the other way around, where their industry is really young, but they don't know how to they know how to automate things, but they're automating the wrong things. I feel like recruiters know what works. If you go into a recruiting agency that's kind of scaled successfully, and let's say they did MPC campaigns to scale those, they do really good. They know exactly how to run an MPC campaign, which has a lot of variables where if you mess up one, it can fall flat for many different reasons. But they have their sales reps individually reaching out to people on an MPC campaign, and one sales rep will reach out to 10 hiring managers a day for one or two MPCs. Like, not scalable whatsoever. Yet they still found a way to succeed because the success rate of that was so high. So my point being is that recruiters kind of know what to do. It's a lot of knowledge in the industry, and there's a lot of experts in the industry, but the automation acumen, I think, compared to some other industries, is lacking a little bit. But that's what makes it such an interesting industry to apply automation to.
It creates a huge opportunity. I mean, that's what it is. That's why you're building Talin. That's why I built Digital Recruiter. It was the same thing. I came from the being the sales, doing that, the 10 meetings, the 10 walk-ins a day with an NPC, doing it the hard way. As soon as I saw automation, I was like, what is this sorcery? Like, this is insane. Like, if I had this at AirTech, like, are you kidding me? And that's been my driving force for almost 5 years now. Of like, I gotta tell other recruiters about this because this would have made my life so much easier to be able to accomplish everything, to be able to accomplish great account management, great recruiter management, new outbound, and all that stuff. So just like scaling the ecosystem without having to work 16, 18-hour days. And like that's what I've seen. And then there's like the right way to do it, right? You see the lead gen companies that just spray and pray, and it can create more headaches than it's worth. And I think recruiting agencies have seen that, they've tried that model, and they're like, oh, that was a bad lead, or it wasn't relevant, or it was outside our niche and all that. So it's just kind of like a bunch of randomness versus like what I realized, like, no, the power is what you just said. The recruiters know what works. So it's just pulling out of them, like, what are you doing that's working? Okay, well, here's how we build the digital strategy around that and implement that. And like, let's create your digital lane. Let's get rid of all the distractions. Like, keep it simple, right? Use talent, use content, and then step in. And with all these new warm signals and replies and all that, then you do what you do. Right? But so many people are skipping that step and be like, well, just make it happen, right? Or they're almost looking at it as like a different piece of the recruiting business, right? The lead gen is different than the sales. It was like, no, it's all merged and holistic, and all has to work together. And so I think that's what's, to your point, really interesting about the intel. And I think there's an evolution happening this year, and I'm here for it. I don't know if people got hit hard or whatever it is, but people are now starting to kind of slow down to speed up a little bit more to do it the right way, right? That's going to get the results.
Yeah, exactly. And if you're building your processes for the first time, or you're building your tech stack, you don't even really want to necessarily build out your tech stack until you know what you need it to do, right? So you're figuring out your BD process, for example. You can do it manually for a bit, right? And you can just extrapolate your numbers, right? If you, let's say I commit to 2 months saying, hey, I'm going to do my BD process completely manually, but you have to promise to yourself that you're going to track how many people you reach out to, the number of accounts, the hiring managers, make sure they're segmented correctly. Uh, how does my success with companies that are 50 to 200 people compare with my success of companies that are like 1,000 plus people? All of those, you make sure you map it out, and you kind of give yourself like a report card, so that after 3 months you can say, okay, like, let's say I booked 5 sales meetings in 3 months. Most people will be like, that's somewhere to start, but that's not enough. Because, okay, but I did everything completely manually, and I know what my inputs were. Once you know what your inputs are, you can then answer the question, can you automate those inputs? Today, the answer is either mostly or entirely. And then once you do that, you go figure out what's the right tool set to automate that, whether it's Talin, might not always be Talin, maybe it's this other tool over here, right? And then you can extrapolate those numbers out. You can say, hey, it took me 180 inputs or 1,200 inputs, whatever it is, to get 5 meetings. And I'm happy with that rate. I'm not doing anything that's damaging my brand, right? I'm not engaging in like pure spam. In 3 months, I want to book 30 sales meetings. Great. You have to use automation as 6x your inputs. You can really take a engineering kind of scientific way of looking at those things. And that's kind of the growth marketer in me talking,
Yep.
right? That's what we were trained to do. Build a model house. Once you're happy with your model house, you bring in the big cranes and the big trucks to build your dream house.
It's exactly it. And so if that's what I was saying, if you have the model house, right? If you have your niche, you have proof of concept, if you have wins and placements and you know what you're doing, you're going to really enjoy the results that you get sooner rather than later. But if you don't have the model house built, I think that's a great analogy is people are trying to scale without anything built. And that's a recipe for disaster. I'll just have our lead gen company, and I'll just go from there. I saw someone that posted a little cocky on Facebook group, and I'm going to call out internal recruiters here a little bit. Like, oh, I placed loan officers. I made 30 hires a month internally. Like, agency recruiter, we all know, like, okay, that's not a big. You have no friction, like internally. And he's like, oh, I'm going to build an agency. I just need a business development person, and I didn't engage because I didn't want to deal with it. And I was like, no, you need to go learn. Like, first of all, you need to save for a year and get your butt kicked for a year in business development, or see if you can build something on the side first, because he needs to build his model house first, and it's got to come from him. It can't be outsourced. It can't come from another hire. Like, that really has to come from the owner or the producer. And I'm sure you've seen that, right? The producers that really have their ducks in a row, they really enjoy automation. And the ones that don't, it's almost like, to your point, they can kind of market test, but you have so many other things to learn. And you just have to be honest with yourself about that. And automation can help you get more reps quicker to learn quicker, but just still set your expectations appropriately.
And I think that's the best company operate, the best founders, right? The best agency owners, they are able to figure it out, kind of how to do it themselves without much else, and build that model house. And once they have that, then they go, okay, now I need to operationalize this. And then you figure out the way to operationalize it. Maybe that's bringing on an agency to take it over. I can guarantee you, if you build a playbook that's successful and you just give that playbook to an agency, the chances of that agency being successful are 10 times higher.
Yep.
Than agencies are not good at coming in and figuring out your strategy from the ground up, because you know your differentiators, your process, you know what makes you special as an agency. You know why clients care about your work. It's going to take a pretty special third party to help you figure that out. You got to know what it is. You got to build a proof of concept, and then you bring in external help. You make a full-time hire, then you have your tech stack, right? Then you layer in all the tools to build the dream house, basically. Yeah.
Exactly. So, well, let's get into Talin then. So you have your own proof of concept. You're making placements. You kind of you figured out. So, do you ever get any like formal training on the recruiting, or sometimes you just kind of go for it and just have some success and then go into kind of building talent?
Yeah. No formal training. Really, I did a lot of research.
Yep.
So the first thing I figured, because the first thing that I know I need to realize, I'm okay, what do recruiters do really, really well? And then where are recruiters generally like weaker, or what skill sets are they weaker on? And I think because recruiting is this, you wear a lot of hats, especially you own an agency, never mind like internal recruiter. If you own an agency and you're an agency recruiter, like you're doing sales, you're doing recruiting, you're marketing your own brand. Do you know what I mean? A lot of your sourcing now really comes down to like sourcing is a type of marketing operations and is like a, sales ops, marketing ops type process. Like there's a lot of hats there, and there's very few recruiters that are really good at all of those things. They're just okay at a bunch of them and they put it together. So what was interesting going in was figuring out stuff that I was out of the box just way better than recruiters at.
Yeah.
For example, like scraping data and then cleaning data, enriching data, finding good providers for things like contact information. That was one of the first things I kind of built out, which Talin now completely automates. But one of the first things that I built out in sort of a low code kind of way that I knew like not a lot of recruiters kind of had. One of them, I'll tell you some of the mistakes I made early on and some of the big learnings I had. And you actually mentioned it before, is my first few, weeks of being a recruiter, I was a spam machine. Because I knew how to scale campaigns, and I'm a pretty good copywriter. I developed a lot. I did a lot of advertising, a lot of like done meta ads. I've done a lot of Google ads. Like that's part of my background. I've done a lot of cold outbound for sales. So I've done a ton of copywriting, which translated beautifully into recruiting. So like my copywriting was great, but I built these lists really quickly because my goal was like, okay, how quickly can I fill this pipeline? Like time to hire, I knew that was one of the most important metrics you could have. And I'd go and I'd hit 800 people for like a mid-level role in a day. And I'd have like 80, 90 responses by the end of the day. And I was like, whoa, look at this. This is awesome. Then I start going through the responses and I'm like, oh man, I have people interested in this job who are not a fit for this job at all.
Oh, this is for the candidate sourcing.
This is for the candidate. This is for the
Oh
candidate
yeah.
side. This
Oh,
is
that's the worst.
the
Yeah.
worst. I was the bad guy.
You are
100%.
definitely the bad guy. Yeah.
Yeah,
You're who everyone's posting about on LinkedIn.
I was that guy. Caveat, for not a very long time.
Yeah.
Quickly figured out that that's
Of
not
course.
the way to
Of
do
course.
it. But it was almost like, yeah, my growth marketing background allowed me to do that like really, really quickly. And I was like, oh geez, this is like not great. And so then it's like, okay, what's the problem to solve to do that? And that's where you get list cleaning, right? Understanding that, when you put your Boolean string or whatever into LinkedIn Recruiter or to Sales Nav or whatever you're using, understanding that after you do that, 60-70% of your list is going to be irrelevant to the job. And so now, and then most recruiters to this day still do this. They flip through profiles like one by one to then remove irrelevant profiles so that they come down to it and they have, a really relevant profile. That's a process that will be, I think, automated mostly by AI, like very soon. Few companies claim they do it. I've tested their technology; it doesn't really work yet. But that is something that is going to be built that I think will absolutely be automated by AI. Is like a good chunk of the sourcing, and the human element in it will be like your final check. And then the front end of whatever piece of tech you're using is going to make that final check really easy and really quick.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Have you seen? Because I know you're able. It's been a couple years. Are you able to just like scrape and clean from like Sales Nav like pretty automatically? Because what was any leads? Was it any leads before that I was using? I don't know. Like we could just like scrape the whole Sales Nav list, like all that, or like clean it out pretty quick. But I don't know if that's still relevant because LinkedIn updated something that we couldn't use that anymore to kind of get the list going pretty quick. But I don't know if you're doing anything like that still, or if we can even talk about it. I have no idea. But
Yeah, like the thing that I'll usually use to like clean lists now, or at least get like throw in like a large list and then essentially find ways to break it down and let's say remove a bunch of the irrelevant profiles like pretty quickly. Right now is honestly is like ChatGPT or Claude. It's like pretty manual in terms of like you got to get the CSV. I'll use Talin to grab that CSV and then throw it into ChatGPT and then say, hey, please filter out anybody whose parameters. One of the things Talin does, it's kind of cool, is we enrich for a lot of their like current um, like their LinkedIn bio, things like their current work description. Like you look at what are the data points that you use to source
Yeah.
on someone's, what are the most data rich parts of a LinkedIn profile, right? It's the LinkedIn bio. It's probably their current company description, and then their own description of their role in the company, right? Those three things are long text,
Yeah.
right? So because they're long text, it's more data rich. People who actually fill out their LinkedIn profile can get a lot more from that. And AI is good at reading through that and saying, oh, this person, it wasn't a quota carrying role, so they're not a good fit as to be like the salesperson. So that's a good process that works now. And hint, hint, we're building that into Talin like pretty soon to be able to do it all in one place.
Well, it's pretty sick. Well, so let's then dive into Talent. Like you started building it 2.5, almost 3 years ago, right? And you guys,
Yeah,
I
yeah,
mean, what's been the journey like there? Yeah.
yeah, we went full time. We went full time and got really serious on it in like January of 2023. Before that, really just a prototype. But yeah, January 2023, CTO and co-founder Trevor, he joined me. I was solo before that, full time, and both of us went full time
Nice.
on it at that point. Before that was really just a bit of a side project that showed some promise. So.
Absolutely. So what is like the mission, right? Like what was the vision? What was the mission behind, kind of in your words, behind launching this and going full time?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've really always been like a builder, kind of like by nature. Yeah, and I got really obsessed with the problem when I kind of came across it, and I think the thing that really like pushed me over the edge to say like this is something worth spending a good chunk of your career on is the fact that I got really obsessed with the problem and also believed I was in this like unique position to solve it. I looked at like the inception, like how I came across the problem, like how my background in this like strange way like worked so well in
Yeah.
recruiting. I'm like, there can't be that many people that have kind of, and I'm gonna have competition. There's people probably building companies exactly like mine right now who are just as smart or smarter than I am and with more talent. You know what I mean? But I'm a pretty resilient dude. I don't go away
Yeah.
easily. And I thought, given all of those kind of things, I'm like, this is the time to kind of do this. And honestly, I'm getting married next year. We don't have kids yet, and this is something I definitely wanted to do before we had little ones running around. So
Absolutely. Well, first of all, congratulations. That's pretty cool, and
thank you.
it is the time to take advantage of it because as someone that launched his business, got engaged 2 months later, and had a first kid, we had the second one on the way. It's interesting. I will say it makes you sharper. Like you do have more time before, but you're almost going to become better after.
Mm,
And that's just kind of what I've noticed. And
interesting.
also maybe for my skill set was better because I was notoriously a little bit of a procrastinator. I can't get away with that anymore. So it might just be to people like me. We get better, and significantly so. But that has been my experience. So either way, how it shapes out, I know you'll be good. But it now is definitely the time to kind of spend those late nights on it, and especially those technical stuff. You're like, oh man, I gotta like fix that campaign or build it out and all that. Like, I used to get in the zone at like midnight, headphones in, like music going. Like if I do that, I am toast the next day. So that's I can do maybe one a quarter now versus before I could do that a little bit more often.
I love it.
But well, let's like so with Talent. So it covers LinkedIn, it covers email. Like, do you want to just give people like a rundown of kind of what it is and what it can do? Well, not everything it can do, but kind of like the cliff notes.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So essentially, like what Talon's really designed to do is to take your sourced lists out of whether it's out of LinkedIn, or we work with a few other data sources as well. So any data, really work with any data source where you could find candidates, enrich that data with everything you'd need. So for example, like personal email addresses. We'd also do work email addresses, cell phone numbers, that LinkedIn profile data, sequence them in a totally like multi-channel campaign across the board: email, SMS, in-mail, etc. Right? Be able to sequence all of that, and then we can personalize that journey with AI as well. So being able to ingest that data about the individual, and in a really interesting sort of subtle way, um, augment that first message that goes out to really make it feel like this message was like made for me. I'll say this: most AI personalization is not done well today. Most of it is really shallow. Nobody cares that they went to the same school. Nobody cares that you and I are both owners of German Shepherds. Well, I mean, maybe dog owners do, but most people don't. You know what I mean? And this, again, this is like, I think it's this kind of, you're taking about an interesting tangent here. It's like we talked before about how you should be automating things that like work. You should be applying AI to things that actually work too. The same vein, like doing, if you know that if you were to go and personalize a campaign that goes out to, whether it's candidates or for a sales campaign, if you did it one by one, it would probably be pretty decent. If AI can't match you, it's not good. And that's what we're spending a lot of time doing, is building out AI personalization that is as good or better than what most individuals could probably do on like sort of like a one by one basis.
Yeah.
Goal being, Talon's real whole goal is to take your 15%, your 10%, your 5% response rate, double it, triple it, quadruple it, while saving you, hours and hours and hours that it would take you to otherwise kind of do that, or those inputs involved. And then lastly, the whole time we automatically update your ATM, your CRM, your ATS, your ATM, hilarious. We do help your ATM.
Yeah.
We do help the ATM as well. Completely automate your data entry into your ATS, into your CRM. If it exists, we update the data, so we freshen the data in your ATS. If it doesn't exist, we'll create sort of a new one. We can connect to both the ATS and the CRM at the same time. So prospect campaigns go to one place, candidate campaigns go to the right place, saving a lot of manual data entry there, like the whole thing. So we are really your all-in-one data provider, and then top of funnel like workflow automation tool.
I love it. We've talked a few times, but like now I was like, wait, I want to ask about 5 of these other things when we we hit end this recording. So I've read some notes down here. But one of the things we've talked about is, and you brought up here, the MPC, but even I know you've had a lot of success with some of the MPC, using some of these workflows and the AI and the automation. Like, want to give like a little bit of kind of like a background on that and kind of how you're leveraging, because it's one of the questions I get all the time. People have heard my answer to this on a few different episodes. I kind of want to get your take and kind of like how you guys are using it, what your approach is there.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've got some cool playbooks actually written out. They're like, you sign up for a Talin free trial. We pre-built these campaigns like right into Talin, so you can just spin them up in like 2 seconds. But the MPC campaigns, we spend a lot of time just doing them ourselves manually for like clients of ours, just working with kind of some of our development partners, some of our clients. We knew if we could figure out ourselves how to run a really solid MPC campaign, we could then build that into Talin, which would be hugely valuable, obviously, for our end users. So I'll just share like a couple of the things that we learned that I think a lot of recruiters would potentially get wrong doing an MPC campaign, and then might lead them to think MPC campaigns just don't work. Which, by the way, my biggest criticism of recruiters, agencies, and I think everyone needs to look inwardly right now, if you're listening to me, and think, is this you? Because this is the growth marketer in me, like, cries when I hear this. Is you try something, you run a campaign, and it doesn't work the first time you try it, and then you quit.
Yeah.
The most damaging thing you can do to your agency is to run a non-statistically significant BD experiment and think that that is the be all end all and that that type of BD does not work. I guarantee you that type of thinking, you'll never have a great BD process.
I think I'm hiring you as a coach for the program and going to backtrack this lesson to our 3 years of digital recruiters for anyone that I heard this from, which is, to be fair, I can count on two hands. Not many of the hundreds we've worked with. Maybe some people were silent about it. The only way to lose is to give up in this. Like, always have it running, always be testing. Think of it as a laboratory, right? It's not something that's wrapped up in a bow and is all pretty. It's like you got to get messy, you got to get dirty with it. But like what Steven Perchikoff, the owner of the lead agency that hired me, that I learned automation from, is like all it takes is one campaign to change our life. That's all it takes. And you're trying to just get to that campaign. If you're not there yet, get there. Because guess what? Thousands of people are there. So if they've done it, it's doable. It works. So stop saying it doesn't work. Just saying I haven't figured it out yet is the way to look at it. That's it. So amen. Thank you.
And you're bang on.
Yeah.
And you hit the nail on the head. Think of it as like you are in the laboratory. You are experimenting. You do not know what works and what does. All you know, if you run an experiment that it doesn't work, all you know is if you look at all the variables that were in that campaign, of which there are many, half a dozen or more. You have the list, that's one variable. You have your copy, that's another variable. You have your segment, right? You have the channel that you're messaging. Like there's all these variables. If one of those variables that's off, think of them as levers. One of them is off, that could cause the whole thing to just not work. And you might have been this close to getting a campaign that gets you a BD campaign with an 8 or 9% response rate, half of those being heavily positive response rates. Like that's what. Second thing I'll share on this, one amazing funnel or campaign can carry you for a long time. I'll make a confession. Early on, we discovered the cold email for Talin and this is how we acquire our own customers. We do a lot of cold email. We're still using the same email we're using a year ago because the stats on it are fantastic. It's like a nearly 10% response rate, and it's actually a pretty long email, which goes against all convention of email advice. Everyone will always say it's got to be 20 words or less or 30 words or less, which is generally true, but we found an exception through our testing, and if it works today, it's probably going to work for a while.
Well, let me
might not work forever, but yeah.
Well, I was just say, let me guess, because there's value. Every word, even when I tell people, most people need short and concise because I don't want them to be a runaway train. But there's a reason why long form sales copy works and all that stuff. Like, but it's no word is wasted. And I bet you it's because of your copy background that every word in that email, nothing is wasted. And it's all super efficient and it's all meaningful. So I want to add that for the listeners because again, that's a veteran. That's why you should hire a copywriter, people that know what they're doing to run that stuff. Because if you just go rogue and test out a long email, it didn't work for me. It's because did you copy and paste from AI? Is there a bunch of fluff? I probably also guarantee it's all about you and nothing about the actual prospect. So I can already kind of envision the framework of the email that you sent out of people. It's probably recruiters like you have used this, and this is how it solved their problem and saved them time. And check out, like, are you interested in learning more? And check out a potential demo or a free trial, right? All that stuff. You're just like bread and butter, right? Am I on track?
Pretty close.
Yeah.
Pretty close.
Yeah. Again, I'm not blowing your cover or anything else like that, but it's just for people to know, like, there's a rhyme and a reason to all this stuff. And there's intentionality and strategy. And if you it's like one of those, like, if you know, right? Like that whole meme. And if you don't know, that's okay. It's coachable. You can learn, but it does take reps. I think having respect for it is key. And sometimes that's missing with agency owners, especially a lot of traditional old school owners. Like, just make all the cold calls, and that are kind of stubborn, and they're losing people.
Mm-hmm.
And people are going elsewhere, starting their own firm because it's like, I don't want to deal with that anymore. So, short and concise until it's not, right? But it's I think testing overall is the key.
Yeah,
for sure.
exactly. And people like will say, "Hey, oh, people have short attention spans." That's not true. People listen to 3-hour podcasts if it's a good podcast.
Yes.
So if you're going to send a bit of a longer message, it's you hit the nail on the head. Are you wasting space? Are you saying anything that means absolutely nothing?
Yeah.
If you start your email with "hope this finds you well," you've already wasted your first line because that
Mm.
means nothing. And
Nothing.
nobody wants to hear that from you.
Yeah.
You want to immediately start with an observation, something you saw, a trigger, or the reason for your outreach. Immediately get into it. That's like one small, sort of
Uh,
example.
it's huge.
Um,
No, it's huge because like, you don't want to wait. You want to show that you're respecting their time, right? It's kind of some of the basic empathy of understanding how much noise is in the world. So you're just always you're just needling, right? If you have the
yeah,
right strategy, you're intentional. You're just like, all right, of 100 people, like who needs this? Like the 10 people at the right time, at the right moment, are going to raise their hand, and like that's the
yep,
way look at it because people get so caught up on one lead or one prospect or what do I see here or I lost it. I'm like, who cares? Like, keep going.
hmm
Like, keep going. I don't sweat. Well, the biggest evolution I made in sales was I truly do not care if someone signs up. Now, sometimes do I get pissed off with how they behaved in the process? Absolutely. Right? They're like, oh yeah, I'm signing up and all this, and then they talk themselves out, some BS. Like, yeah, I'm like, oh, that's annoying, right? I thought they were further along than they revealed themselves to be. And sometimes like things come up that I have no control over, and that's fine. But then I sleep it off and I move on. Like I don't care because I know my automation is going to keep going. My content's going to keep going. Like it's going to generate new every day. And I think that's one of the biggest things you can do for yourself is the testing, but then the volume. It's like you just get rid of that scarcity. Like in that
hmm
abundance mindset, right? It changes everything. How much more are you able to accomplish because you have that?
100%. No, 100%. And I want to go back to the MPC
Yeah.
thing real quick before we wrap up. Um, so I've got my kind of theory on why MPC campaigns work, and I think this is a really important concept, and this is the thing that's going to keep agencies relevant into the future. Because if you look at a lot of the agency process, there's obviously the human-centered parts that we talked about. There's a lot of it that you can automate, and I hate to break it to folks, the automation you're going to see is only going to get more witchcraft like. It's going to get wild as to the stuff that you can automate. Every 6 months, AI is becoming a magnitude better. It's
Yeah.
insane. It's a little freaky if I'm being honest. But so that's why when you see these things happen, you have to think, okay, what keeps us relevant? What are the things that we can do to build a moat where it doesn't matter how good the automation gets, we make ourselves, as agency owners, relevant and to stay that way. And your relationship with talent is one of the most powerful things that I think you have as an agency. And it's something that internal talent teams can't do in the same way.
No.
Think of it like, why would I want a real estate agent if AI can automate the entire house buying rather process for me? Same kind of idea. It's because when I'm working with my real estate, I need someone who I trust unequivocally through a pretty complex process, right? I want that relationship. That relationship with my real estate agent makes me feel good. The same way, if you have a great relationship with a recruiter who's an external recruiter, part of an agency, they represent you in a lot of ways and can go to bat for you in something like an MPC campaign, right? You can't have that relationship with an internal recruiter because that internal recruiter has one place they want to place you. They are not interested in getting the best possible place out there for you,
And they're not
or
on your
maybe
side.
they're really not on your
They're
side, right?
really not on your side. Yeah.
A really good recruiter. Now you're going to have transactional recruiters who the best employer for my candidate is the one who hires them first, which is you're not really doing your job there as a recruiter, but long term that's going to obviously bite you if that's the way that you're kind of doing it. By having these relationships with talent, that is something that no piece of automation tech or AI is really going to be able to take that away from you.
Yeah.
And the more you build out your network, your database, I think every recruiter should have a database of talent that they work with that's like open to work that they can share with companies, obviously with permission, from those candidates, and actually market your own databases that you have. We're starting to see companies, and we're working with some companies who are investing in that right now with us. We're saying, hey, I want to have a Notion database that's password protected that we could share with companies who opt in, with the permission of the candidates. And obviously, if you're niche, most agencies are fairly niche now. You can target that, pretty well. Stuff like that, you can't really automate that away. So focusing on and bringing this full circle, the more you invest in automation, the more time you're going to have to actually build out those relationships in the proper way.
Invest in automation and invest in relationships. I mean that's it, and teach your people how to build those relationships, those rapport, come through, and then you can leverage automation to you can impact. I mean, we're creating lead magnets, because I have some recruiters that are like, I got all these people that are looking for a job. I'm like, well, create a lead magnet, fix your profile, use Sales Navigator, use automation like Talin, post content. Here's how to supercharge your job search. I just built I recorded it, I typed it out, I created the formatting with AI, and I sent it to the people in the program. Here, use this, give this to the people, like that. I'm like, oh, that's a value add. Right? You can create an opt in around it if you want, track emails and everything. That's a quick value add. You don't have to get on the phone with all 50 people. You could just send that, and they're still like, wow, that I got so much value from Clark, and I didn't have to spend 30. And I'm like, I didn't have to spend 30-minute phone call. Now, do I have a problem with talking to someone for 30 minutes? No, but I want to make it relevant and timely for myself and the other party. Right? Like if it's a conversation that could wait until something more relevant comes up, or then that's fine. But in the meantime, what do I know to give them some advantage and some heads up, build that goodwill at scale? And I think that's ultimately where the relationship with automation comes in. It's like, how can you build goodwill at scale or personalization at scale, right? That experience or value at scale. And if you look at it that way, to your point, I think that is who is going to stick and thrive.
Yeah, couldn't agree more.
Well, let's wrap it up. What else do we want to cover? Do we want to cover, AI next 10 years, be an entrepreneur, like challenges like incorporating all this into the workflow? Like, what's top of mind, man?
Yeah, AI. I think a lot of recruiters are asking, what's this actually going to look like in my workflow? You know what I mean? Most of us are using ChatGPT or some equivalent, and we're starting to get a feel for like what that can do. But that is really at the end of the day, it's a chatbot, a multimodal chatbot, right? At the end of the day, AI is going to start and has already started working its way into a ton of different workflows. Some that people actually aren't even aware of that AI is already working. Others where the front end feature that they're looking at is kind of marketed as or like is an AI saying, hey, we're doing AI to accomplish X for you, right? So we already covered a couple where AI is tackled. AI sourcing, lots and lots of people are working on AI sourcing. I think that's gonna happen like relatively soon. AI in terms of like copywriting and personalization, we do that already today. Other companies are starting to do it. That's a race for people to see who does it well. I think if you open up most AI personalization tools, they're not going to do a phenomenal job. So you're going to see a lot of watered down AI tools like this, right? That just kind of are flashy and look cool, but like are not robust enough or build enough trust for you to just basically run it and then launch it. It's still kind of in that phase where I'm going to try it out. I'm going to look at the results, see how I like it, maybe remove a few, maybe run with a couple, right? So those are two, really interesting use cases. And then there's obviously this concept of like AI agents, which is like really big right now.
Yeah.
You look at Salesforce. So I don't know if you heard that Salesforce is completely doubling down on the idea of AI agents. They're investing crazy amounts into it. They say that they've built their own models kind of from scratch that are all centered around AI agents for enterprise grade tasks and automation and stuff like that. I think in our industry, so one of the things that's unique about recruiting compared to, let's say, sales in general, when you're recruiting candidates, there has to be an element of comprehensiveness. Like, you need to know that you parsed through and scraped all the possible angles of a pool of potential candidates. That's why people pay for LinkedIn Recruiter. That's why people pay like $600 a month,
Mm-hmm.
right, for RPS, because it's one of the few ways to get the access to LinkedIn's entire database, right, without any dark spots. So I think that AI agents, or this concept of AI agents, we're going to have to trust that they're comprehensive if they're doing recruiting. And so is that, I know from a fact with today's technology and what I'm seeing, I don't see it happening in the short term. You run AI functions, it never seems to be able to go through all of the available data, and on their own anyways. It's the co-pilot experience is what we're seeing, versus this, like, I'm going to send this agent away. The other issue with that is I need a front end to see, right? So, like, when you think of an AI agent, you think of someone, you're talking to a chatbot, you tell it to do something and it comes back and then brings you that information, or let's say it actually does the task for you. Let's say you tell an AI agent, hey, book me a reservation at a restaurant. It goes and just does it, right? In recruiting, you need a front end. You got to kind of see what's going on. You got to see the messaging. You might see a whole campaign that it's created. You need to kind of give it some, like, directive. So even if I think AI agents will be just like a way of building things, I can't see the front end of SaaS going away. If that makes sense.
It does. Well, you know what's making me think of is, I know you're up in Canada, but I don't know how much you pay attention to the NFL or not. But I, grew up in New England, grew up north of Boston, was diehard, still am diehard Patriots fan, even if they're 1-4, but it's all good. But grew up Tom Brady, Bill Belichick era. One of the things with, you look at the Patriots from 2001 to 2020, or whenever Brady left, is the evolution, right? His first Super Bowl year to what they look like in 2007, the almost undefeated season, to 2014, the evolution. And one of the things that, for an example, is I remember when the spread started to become more in the NFL and all that, but traditionally it was like you do a 3-4, you do a 4-3 defense. And then Belichick comes out and he's like got 2 defensive linemen, 4 linebackers, 5 defensive backs, or 2 defensive linemen. You get 1 nose guard, 5 linebackers and 5 defensive backs. And everyone's like, what is going on? And that's the defense they're running, because, like, well, all they were going to do was pass. So, like, why am I going to have 5 defensive linemen in the game? Right. And so, there's always a move. It's chess, right? There's always a move in the market, and then you can play another move, right? And I think sometimes you're going to go like more AIs, going back to more authenticity, more relationships, doing some things that other people are automating and actually doing more personally, and automating things that are, non-human. Like, so there's just always that mindset of like, where is the opportunity? Where's the weakness in the market right now? Or where's the area to capitalize? And to me, those things always exist, but they just evolve. And sometimes it rhymes. Right now, we're going to see people kind of go back to some of the power running game in the NFL, because it's been so pass heavy, and defenses kind of figured that out. So now what you can do, you can kind of run the ball. So, like, there's just cycles is what I'm getting at. And so be a recruiter, be an owner that's like thinking of that and looking for the trends. And when the trend almost gets too dominant, sometimes the old school approach actually kind of becomes more effective again. So, like, does that make sense? Like, I don't know if I explained it correctly, but
yeah, it's kind of like, I think why, like, I think people have gone back a little bit to cold calling,
yes,
because I think you have a generation of salespeople that just don't know how to cold call well. And
to that point, I mean, I'm only interrupting. It's the cold call because it goes right to voicemail. What was the old school thing 20 years ago? Don't leave a voicemail. Now I'm telling people, leave a voicemail. Hey, I shot you a connection request on LinkedIn. I'm going to follow up with an email, and it gets them there.
Totally. And now, like, and this was, I don't know, I can't remember, it was like a year or 2 ago, right? It dictates on your phone in real time. So even if they don't, let's say they don't pick it up, they're literally reading your voicemail in real time as it's happening, which is a rich digital engagement. Like that's
Yes.
I have ignored calls, read that message, and then been like, oh, I should. Okay, this guy did reach out to me on LinkedIn or something like that. I'll go check out his profile, and I'm like, oh, this company does like, you know, X,
Something I
and I'm
want,
like,
something I need right
that's
now. I'm like,
that's
oh,
actually
yeah.
you've gotten in front of them. You know what I mean? So totally. I think it's yeah. If something, if the market becomes like over dominant in one area, yeah, look where people aren't looking.
And you can have your warm call list all built out from Talent. From
Yeah,
you have your LinkedIn, your email, your everything, and then just all you got to do is pick up the phone, redirect them back to everything that Talent's done for you. Like get them on your LinkedIn profile, have good content, all that, and like that could be it. So I think that's I think we've just summarized the whole thing right then and there, which is good. It's a good place to end at the hour mark. Just past it. I'm going to end with the recruiting industry. Really, as we know today, started in the 40s and 50s, post World War II, expanded in the 60s, 70s, and went global in the 80s and 90s. So
love it.
we were on track there
There we
in
go.
a sense. So I did a little chat GPT while we were going.
I love it.
No, but dude, this is super fun. You're so knowledgeable. What you're building is epic, and it's great to talk to someone that's doing this that I can actually talk to and meet and just gets it. And you've been a recruiter yourself, which is rare in terms of all these tools that are sold to recruiters. So I love that you're in the trenches with the rest of us. And just appreciate you coming on here, man.
Thanks for having me, Clark. I appreciate it. Always good to chat with someone who gets it and who is preaching the good word, man. So thank you, and thank you for having me. And yeah, looking forward to hopefully doing some more cool stuff together
Oh,
in the future.
we definitely will. Starting with as soon as I press end on this record, I have about 10 questions for you. So, Talin.ai, it'll be in the episode summary. Check it out. Connect with Julian on LinkedIn. What they could do? They could try Talin for free. They can book a demo with you. Like, it's so easy to talk to you and like to figure this and to get started, right?
Yeah, we're starting to scale, but I'm still involved. You can
Or no, talk to book now until you can't in January. So,
yeah, you can start your free trial right. You go to Talin.ai. You can start for free there. It's very easy to get set up. There's no wall behind Talin or anything like that. You can get in and start a campaign in minutes. And if you want a demo, hit us up on our live chat right in the app, or hit me up on LinkedIn. And yeah, we'd be happy to have someone walk you through it.
small agencies, big agencies, everything in between. So,
Yep.
definitely hit up Julian and check out Talon.ai. Again, thanks, man, and leave a good review, 5-star. This episode definitely earned it. Hey, you earned us some 5-star reviews. So make sure to subscribe, rate it, so we can keep this thing going. And appreciate you, man.
Cool. Thanks, Clark. Cheers, everyone.
See y'all.